All right, so I wanted to talk about this concept of extracting maximum value, which is essentially critical to being a long-term profitable player, and something a lot of amateur players and a lot of inexperienced players really have trouble with. So let me explain exactly what this concept of value is. So you're either doing one of two things in poker. Either you're betting for value, or you're value betting, or you're bluffing. So either you're betting with a better hand than your opponent, trying to get them to call, or you're trying to push your opponent off cards that are essentially better than yours. Now, there is no in between, except for like if you have the same exact hand, then that's the in between. But you're either value betting or you're bluffing. That's what's going on in poker. And the problem is, often when players are value betting, they're not extracting enough value. So, for example, the example would be like, you're on the river and you throw out a 25%, you bet 25% of the pot, and the player instant calls you, and you have top pair and they have, I don't know, you have top pair, they have middle pair or something like that. And the fact of the matter is, let's say you bet 30%. Now, if they would have called 50%, a 50% pot bet, and you only bet 30, you lost 20%. So you weren't extracting enough value. Everybody has this number, or this kind of like, a lot of people, like, you'll see they'll call for 500 instantly, but for 700 they'll fold. So 600 might be that sweet spot where they bet. So you're trying, essentially, when you have a better hand than your opponent, you're trying to suck them dry. You're trying to get as many chips as possible that they have into your stack. All right, and this is an art. And what happens is, a lot of players, you'll see, they get nervous. So like all of a sudden they get the best hand and they don't know what to do, so they just toss out chips, and they scare their opponents away. And there's a big difference between walking away a hand where you could potentially have won $300 and you only get away with 100. So extracting maximum value is very important. And I'll go over a couple concepts within it. So this is how I explain the concept to new players. It's similar to bribing somebody. So let's say you go to a club and you walk up to the bouncer and he's like, "I'm sorry, it costs, we're all full." And you need to go in for a birthday or something of that nature, and you need to talk to them, and you need to bribe the bouncer. So if you give the bouncer $500, he's going to let you in, give you a big hug, and never forget your name, because bouncers make $100 a night, and $500 is a significant amount of money. However, he might have let you in for 50 bucks, so you wasted $450. Now, if you give him $20, he might tell you to go around the corner and talk to his friend Mike, and you go around the corner, there's no Mike, there's nobody there. So you just lost the $20. So what's the exact amount of money that you can pay to get into the club, but at the same time save the most money? If you give him $50 and he would have let you in for 40, you just lost $10. Now, it's that analogy that needs to be applied to poker, both when you're value betting and when you're bluffing. If you can get an opponent to fold for $1,000 and you bet $2,000, you just wasted $1,000 of that 1 or 2% of the time he has the nuts. It's the same kind of concept, all right? Now, how you get good at extracting maximum value is an interesting thing. People always ask, "Oh, what do I bet here on the river?" Or what do I bet, what percentage of the pot? There is no percentage. Extracting maximum value comes from putting your opponent on a range of hands, and then as you get later and later towards the river, narrowing that range of hands. If you know what a player holds, it's easy to extract value because you kind of assume. Like for example, if let's say you have like a pretty dry board, a pretty dry turn, a pretty dry river, but the board has an ace, and you put your opponent on ace 10, and you know that your opponent kind of fears that you have a better ace. You can kind of bet on the river there and kind of feel like, all right, if I was in his spot, like what would I have a hard time getting away with? Like a $300 bet, players might have a hard time folding ace jack for that, so cheap, so they call. So that's extracting maximum value right there. And it's essential. It's essential to long-term profitability. I mean, like, the fact of the matter is, it's really essential because a lot of players will, call with sets and so on and so forth. So they'll oh, I'm getting, my implied odds are good, and I'm going to call with the set. But the fact of the matter is, when they do flop their set, they're terrible at extracting value. So their sets have a lot less value than they think they do. And I'll talk about this in another video. But it's essential. It's something you have to do, and you only get good at it by thinking actively about ranges. There is no way else. There's no magical number. There's no formula to extracting value. The fact of the matter is, you have to actively be thinking about your opponent's range and actively trying to put yourself in their shoes to extract as much money as possible. And it's cool because you know when you've done it. Like, I've become good at this over the in the beginning I sucked, but after playing teaching for so many years, I've been really good at extracting value. And the reason I know is because when I make river bets, or people have a hard time. So like they'll sit in their chair and they'll be like, oh. They lean back and they're just so struggling because I hit that number where they like, oh, they want to call so bad and they don't think they can get away with this, so they call. If you're betting on rivers and and all of a sudden the players are instant folding, then it's probably too much or too little or whatever. So you like to see that struggle in the player. And everybody's got that number. I have that number, sometimes I know I have the worst hand, but they bet so cheap that I'm like, it's so tempting. It's like 10, 20% of the pot, but it looks like a value bet. And then therefore there's also something called the value bet bluff, which I'll talk about in another video, which I love. It's basically you make a value bet on a river that looks like a value bet, but really it's a bluff. So it's cool. But I wish there was kind of this piece of advice that I can give you where you could extract maximum value all the time. I mean, it's thinking about ranges, which is the most difficult thing for most opponents. In my profitable class, the one I'm releasing online, I go over all these examples of situations on where you're going to extract maximum value. But it's something you should think about. Start thinking about, could I have gotten more money out of this person? All right? Don't just be so happy that you won a pot. You shouldn't be happy. Okay, you won a pot, good for you. You had the best hand, yay. But the fact of the matter is, could you have gotten more money? Most of the time, yes. So I really want everybody to kind of be very mindful of that. Extracting maximum value is something that really experienced players are really, really good at. And that's why their profits are usually good, because of the times that they hit, they extract as much money as possible. And of the times that they lose, they give away as least value as possible. So it's very, very important, okay?